Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name's Cureton, senior journalist for XR Today. We're always bringing you the latest and greatest from the VR, AR, and XR industries. Now, we're going to have on our nice, happy, big show event for today. We have on some very special guests. We have on Mr. Kevin O'Donovan. He is a technology evangelist and co-chair of the VRARA Industrial Metaverse Committee. And we have Mr. Andre McQueen, special lecturer for the MA and MBA Futures and Innovation program at the University of the Arts of London. Thanks so much, guys, for coming on today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right. So yeah, we've got Kevin O'Donovan joining us from the southern part of France, and we have Andre McQueen joining us from the capital in Berlin. So we're going to have a great chat for us today. We're going to cover some of the big news topics taking place in the news. We want to first start off with Mojo Vision. Now, recently, they canceled their AR contact lens program, and their initiative has basically been shelved until further notice. Now, I wanted to start with you, Kevin, the technology evangelist. What can you tell us about the significance of this cancellation, and what does it mean for the AR contact lens industry, like other competitors or rivals?
Well, I suppose, first of all, if you read through the press release, whatever, 75% of their staff are going off doing something else. So that's the impact of these projects being shelved. In terms, there are other companies out there looking at this, but I think what I found fascinating about it was that obviously they're taking their micro LED technology and they're bringing it to the general display in the industry. And that's like about $160 billion business. They mentioned in their press release and then in your report that they were expecting to bring this to market at the end of the decade. And I suppose with the current economic outlook and whatever, and for any startup, it's about time to revenue, right? So I think they're taking a lot of the technology they have, and so that's not going away. They bring it into the display industry. So it's not that this stuff will never happen in a contact lens, but they see a better commercial viability for their technology short term in adjacent industry, if that makes sense. So I wish them well.
Yeah, as we all do, definitely. And I was a little heartbroken when I heard the news, but I was like, oh no, they have to persevere. Now, Andre, what were your initial thoughts about this story? And what else would you like to add about that? Do you think that they'll make a comeback sometime in the near future?
Yeah, I tend to echo a little bit what Kevin was just saying, really, in respect to the pivot to sort of micro LED technology and seeing that as a way to sort of leverage that sort of knowledge base that they sort of built up over the years and leveraging that in a way which might well put them in a sort of leadership position in other areas or adjacent areas, which could be quite advantageous for them. And so I suppose given the market conditions, can certainly see the logic behind the move and behind the pivot. I think in general, maybe AR is a little bit from a point of investment, and from what I understand from the story and the conditions around it, I feel as though we're sort of waiting for that sort of killer application, that real value for the end user, which may be part of the indicator why they have to shift and sort of shelve that perhaps temporarily, over the years until we might get to that point where we have that sort of killer application. So I can certainly see the logic behind it, and sort of, as you say, to somewhat a disappointment for I was particularly excited about what they were potentially looking at for that sort of low vision user and how that might be advantageous for low sighted people. So it's a shame on that level, but I think we've seen some useful, interesting applications within that from other companies looking into that space. So which is perhaps more realistic and probably more reliable at this stage.
And if I may add, is that if you look at what they were doing, so you had the display technology, the micro LED, you had high-speed wireless, you had battery, eye gesture control, GUI, whatever, all on a contact lens. So I'm like, I don't know the company, I can't speak for whatever, but like there's a lot of hard things to do there. So trying to do it all, but maybe build on the micro LED and go from there. But as I say, I wish him well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can't always see these as failures. And just to add to you guys' point, every little thing that takes place in this industry is an emerging technology. So we look at it like we make some milestones, and then we can use that as kind of empirical data that, other companies can incorporate into their own solutions, or come back to it later on when the capital does start to to kind of revitalize a bit and people can contribute. So yeah, excellent points. I'd like to take you to the next one. We're going to talk a little bit about Intel. They have made a new chipset to improve MetaQuest PC VR streaming. So PC VR streaming is, of course, the ability to stream sometimes wirelessly to different devices, especially other PCs, share data and links between headsets as well. And I think that this is a very interesting collaboration that Meta has created with Intel. Now, for you guys, have you ever used PC streaming, and what are some of the best use cases for that? Guess, Andre, you want to start this one this time?
No, I haven't actually used PC streaming, but from what I understand, it would be very useful for sort of playing intensive games or titles, if you like. So I can certainly see where the advantage or the idea of the advantage will take place in that respect, and to sort of, if you like, settle down some of those sort of latency issues that potentially can cause some sickness, and I suppose from an enjoyable perspective. But I personally cannot comment on the experience.
Right. How about you, Kevin?
But so for transparency, so I was with Intel for about 13 years, but I wasn't in the wireless chip business with them. And I've tried kind of previous versions of this kind of technology, and I suppose that it's a good step forward, because as fast as we think the speed of light is, the way we normally do this with streaming to a wireless headset is it goes through the router. So you have two hops: PC to router, router to headset, and it just adds a couple of milliseconds, right, or 100 milliseconds, and then you get into some of the latency, the hand tracking and whatever. So if you can, it's like anything, if you can reduce the latency, you get a better experience. And I suppose the other thing it highlights is that as we find new use cases, new ways of using this technology, we'll find we have different hardware bottlenecks, whether it's the CPU in the headset, the memory, the connectivity, there's something. So we just keep pushing the boundaries. So this is just a good step forward in terms of being able to connect wirelessly, because you can use the power of the PC to drive the game, the experience, and then just display it on the screen. But I find it fascinating. Every time we come up with a new thing, we find the next little roadblock we need to overcome, and then someone comes up with something like this, right? And I think this is going to continue till the cows come home.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead, Andre. Yeah.
Was that in sort of more general sort of, I suppose, perception of sort of like VR and how this is sort of a continuous iterative process, sort of echoing a little bit on Kevin's point, and to sort of get that sort of fully convincing experience, I think is also that as much as these sort of little iteration in terms of speed, latency, and all those kind of areas. There's always, I also think about those other peripheral or other complementary technologies that need to also move steps forward in terms of creating these ideas in sync, so that it really does bring that immersive quality to the experience. And so I'm thinking about considering the whole body immersion as a whole, so that body and mind, and how they sort of play and interact with each other. Because I think in terms of sensories, we're sort of concentrating quite a lot on the sort of visual and audio. But what about some of those other sensory areas? That sort of kinesthesia, how that the body works with each other, and where those elements and that sort of understanding the sense of self movement within those. Or in these sort of virtual experiences, to sort of give us a sort of holistic experience, which I think also will help in terms of some of that sort of not only immersion, but sort of wanting to stay in the experience, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. People who are using these headsets, they look for optimal experiences. Of course, like with both of you mentioned, low latency and also issues with motion sickness. But also just overall an easily connected experience. For example, like Correct. At the holidays, I was playing some of the games with some of my nieces and nephews who were playing Beat Saber. And we streamed, we all entered the same space and were able to play with each other, using the different, swords and, different games. So that technology allows people to have that flawless streaming experience. But then when you start to, ramp things up, you may play things like Half-Life or, Arizona Sunrise, or even like use some therapies or any types of different programs that will help these companies to stream directly. It would actually literally cuts the cord and allows multiple people to interact in the same metaverse space to, either interact with different therapeutic tools like what Hatsumi had created not too long ago. I think we spoke about that at the ISE last year. Imagine a room full of people in the same space working on their own, artworks to try to express how their mental health, affected them in their daily lives, and sharing that experiences with the rest of the world. So these things are going to be excellent tools. Great.
No, and it will bring up bottlenecks. We talked about like the Meta and Intel engagement here for streaming to the device. But like you even chat to some of the telcos and you say, well, if everybody starts using VR from home, the upload download speeds almost need to be 50-50. Today, most telecom networks are 80-20, 80 down, 20 up. That needs a total reconfiguration, because otherwise you get I'm kind of jerky in the VR environment, and this is back to even in the meeting, business meeting. So I think we're just starting out, but good technology, good ideas, good innovation, but we need a lot more as well, and especially with the haptic. And I'm an old school guy, right? So I have mouse and keyboard. Pass through isn't great. So wouldn't it be great if I could just click and click? And that works, but it needs to be quicker. So Andre, to your point, yeah, there's a lot of, and there are companies out there doing some of the very cool stuff, right? So I think we're still just scratching the surface. So.
Absolutely. And, there's going to be future innovations that really start to push the envelope with this type of technology. Moving on, actually, speaking about that, we have Roblox. Now, not sure how many of us have actually used Roblox, but they are going to start a partnership with the Meta Quest product lineup. And I think that this is going to lead to some excellent integrations. As a starter question, I'd like to ask you guys, what do you think about some of the recent collaborations in the XR space? And how do you think they will actually help create interoperability between, different partners in the ecosystem?
I personally think it's a very positive step, because what we talk about with whatever the metaverse ends up to be is something that's interoperable, because it's not going to be just one thing and it all looks the same. There will be multiple different worlds or experiences, and the idea that you can kind of jump across. And like, if you look back at the internet when we started out, or Apple and Google last couple of years or whatever, we kind of end up with very much walled gardens. So these guys, all the companies are all starting to collaborate with each other. Now, fine, they obviously all have vested interests and whatever, but I see it as a positive. I think a lot of the standards will get driven by them working together as well, and going, oh, our stuff doesn't work with yours, we need to fix that. So how do we do? And a lot of that feeds into standards over time. So I think it'll accelerate some of the interoperability. And I think it's also that most companies are looking at it going, nobody can do it all. So I think it's positive, but obviously we need to see it play out and who works nice with who and whatever. But
yeah, definitely. I think that, there could be some, excellent collaborations with, different companies. Andre, for you, what does it mean to have a healthy, interoperable ecosystem in the, I guess with the metaverse or with XR in general?
Yeah, I think that it needs to have that with respect to. It's almost if you garden it off, I think nobody wins. So I tend like to use a sort of sports analogy or sports team analogy. Like we win together or lose together ultimately, because if they don't play together as a team, then nobody, I think, will really win in this space, because it becomes too sectioned off that it becomes more of a pain. I think it will increase the friction that we're supposedly trying to reduce in some ways in terms of accessing these sort of digital experiences or worlds. So I think it might be a case of necessity by them having to play together, to get them to the point whether some of them will play more nicely with others than, and where those partnerships go. Some will get married and some will get divorced and all of those things. And I look forward to seeing how some of that play out. It could be a bit of a soap opera. But I think in general, the idea of them working collaboratively together, I think ultimately makes sense. I somewhat struggle or have the imagination to sort of see how it can sort of work otherwise.
And, if I may as well, in terms of what they're trying to do, if you look at Roblox and all the kids out there creating their own games and you play with, here's the game I created, is playing that and whatever. So the ability to be able to take something like the Quest, let's say the Quest Pro or the Quest 3 coming later or whatever, in terms of a mixed reality. So I can play the game on the living room table or on the floor in color. The mind boggles in terms of what that would look like. But the other thing that caught my in your article was that companies are starting to work with Roblox around developing metaverse. Games is the wrong word, right? But environments. Now, I'm a bit of a geek, so I got into Roblox and different games. But I'll tell you what's fascinating. If you want to create a game in Roblox, you have the Roblox editor. Now, this is not it's not the exact same as NVIDIA's Omniverse tool or Blender or Unity or whatever, but it's a full editor. and you can go off and create an environment that looks like a factory and then do cool stuff inside there, the treasure hunt for your employees, whatever. So I find that fascinating because the ability that people can create their own environments using something like Roblox, where we kind of think, oh, that's just the young kids playing games. I'm like, that's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it brings us to the topic of serious gaming. This is something that Microsoft has been, thinking about for quite some time, and they've actually articulated in previous, events or things that they have attended, where we have these gaming applications, these gaming tools that they're actually incorporating into real metaverse technologies, which are working really well for a lot of them, and they've already got the infrastructure in place. Now, Andre, I think we're roughly around the same age, and we've been kind of like really big into a lot of the different kinds of gaming consoles, like the PlayStation and the Xbox and things like that, and Nintendo from way back when, and so on. Like, what do you think about gaming in general? And how do you think that these gaming technologies are helping to build the metaverse that we see today? I know Kevin made some very good points about that. I wanted to get yours as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think gaming, in my view, gaming for a long time has been sort of somewhat underestimated in previous years. And I think it's been, greatly advantageous, obviously, for the metaverse in terms of some of the ability, the powering, I know even like some of the mechanisms within that, right, and how they engage and keep people in those spaces and entertain people, whether you consider it to be youth, and the idea of gaming or who plays games is obviously expanded from that archetypal stereotype of former times. So, I mean, to Kevin's point, age range, it's expanded. So I think in terms of their influence, it's clear, it's dominant, right? I just look at some of the things that I sometimes talk about within some of the lectures, or even who I'm looking at in terms of some of the futures projects, and how much gaming dominates a lot of the space in terms of the testing grounds, in terms of some of the collaborative efforts. When we think of like some of the industries, fashion particularly, it's benefited and particularly played a strong role in that. And we see that playing out in, from say sports companies with Nike, etc., playing out in those spaces. And even some of the aesthetics and everything that's sort of playing out in the supposed metaverse have these strong gaming influences. And so I think that the gaming world has been really influential in sort of driving this and where it is today and its current sort of short-term forecast, if you like, in terms of obviously over the next couple of years or so, where it might go. But how it plays out over the long term is really interesting. But then when you think about what Unreal has been doing in terms of some of the technology they've been evolving, it's really quite I still can't get my head around what they're doing and how they're doing that. To be quite honest, it feels like magic, really does. So I'm really excited to see how that plays out over the coming years.
To add to Andre's point, you mentioned Unreal, NVIDIA with Omniverse, Unity. So the game engines are now being used by industry because they've got all the physics, a lot of physics models built in. And if I want to create a model of a 3D city, I don't have to go off and create the engine behind it, right? They're there. There's developer tools and whatever. But I'm a PC gamer, right? I'm old enough and I've always been PC. We had a Wii thing from Nintendo years ago to get the kids out of their room so we could all play in the living room, whatever. But to me, it's like, so it started with Minecraft, and a lot of people of my ilk would say, playing games. They're just playing games. And I'm going, yeah, there is playing games. But what it's all about now is creating your own game. So Minecraft, even in Fortnite, in pick a robot, whatever. And the concept that these kids are getting, boys and girls and teenagers and whatever, in terms of spatial awareness and creating something in 3D, they're the engineers of the future, right? Like we used to have Meccano and Lego. They're now doing it in a 3D world. So it's not just I think we need to move away from the gaming as just playing games. It's about creating. And that's the new generation of engineers and designers that will be coming into the workforce in the next decade. I think that's huge beneficial.
Both of you make very interesting points about kind of creating the skill sets of future generations that will be working with new technologies. So in the past, if you wanted to do like a trade, you had to learn how to build like little things with Legos, blocks, things of that nature, and that kind of engendered within you, the capabilities to, work with engineering or maybe be curious about certain, mechanical projects. But I think that nowadays, these, kids are learning how to be creative, looking at a computer screen saying, oh, well, this is the world that I want to build. This is the world I want to develop. And this is actually teaching them those skills so that when they're ready to step into the workforce, they can jump on a Unity, platform or jump on Epic Games, create these universes and know how to apply them to the real world, because the mixed reality aspect of that is going to merge the these two together. And it's going to take a special kind of ingenuity to do that. You made some very interesting points about that, about how people are able to kind of leverage different kind of platforms like Unity Technologies and Epic Games to actually, monitor these entire facilities in real time and then be able to send and deploy the right number of people to, take care of something that's broken down, to make sure that things are working at their optimal level, even save carbon footprint emissions, things of that nature, to meet sustainable development goals. So for them, I think that this is going to be very key to have that kind of insight, to be able to know how to work with the metaverse world, as a young child or as a young learner, and then apply those skills later on. Like in the past, we worked, your dad would help you to fix a car, and then you were able to kind of work with a motor vehicle later on. You built things out of Legos, then, that inspires you to become a mechanical engineer. And so these days, children are starting to work more with these types of tools and technologies to build the new skill sets that they need for the future to building the metaverse. Well, I guess we have time for one more, and then we'll wrap it up for today. We go over to our story about Meta releasing the Meta Quest 3 in this year. Now, we've had a lot of headset delays throughout the last few months, and a lot of that has been contributed to Apple and Meta also scrapping their AR smart glasses program, Project Nazare. But the Meta Quest 3 is still on schedule. So now, what can we expect from this type of headset now that they've released the Meta Quest Pro? Andre, would you like to start with that one?
I mean, I think the interesting thing that or question that I had was, will it be incorporating this next generation Snapdragon, and like what would that offer? I guess going into this release, and In terms of what I would expect, I would expect what you would typically expect in any sort of iteration, really, and that's an improvement on speed, an improvement on clarity of vision, improvement on the typical areas. I think it's too short, in my mind, too short of a period to see any dramatic, mind-blowingly new things that you wouldn't typically, or that's not already in existence already within your typical pipeline. But I'll be really interested to see what they do in terms of introducing the chipset and what they may offer in terms of graphical capability, and seeing how that sort of how that would really sort of elevate potentially what this, as we talked about earlier, in terms of this sort of immersion, and seeing how these how consumers or users will be able to interact and enjoy the experience, whether they can level up enough that really we start to see some progress, where we can sort of see, when I say progress, see it in a way that where it seems a worthwhile taking on a longer term role.
Absolutely. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of surprises for that too, especially the hardware upgrades, developments, the new pancake lenses. Kevin, I wanted to ask you about the same thing. Are you excited to get your hands on one of these devices?
Oh yeah, reading the announcements, and I have no insight into what Meta are up to, but like Christmas next year, whatever, stocking filler, Quest 3. I agree with Andre in that. Now, that said, they may pull something out of a hat and go, "Here's a new piece of technology, new way of doing things," and we all go, "Oh wow, didn't see that coming." What I do think we'll probably see is that if they start releasing the SDKs for people to start developing for the new headset in like Q2, Q3 before, so that there's titles ready, we'll probably see what the SDK has in terms of, what are the capabilities you can plug into. So I agree with Andre. I think a lot of it will probably be incremental. I've tried out the Quest Pro, cool piece of kit. The pass-through augmented reality in color compared to the Quest 2. That opens up all sorts of things with Roblox and whatever. So I do think in some ways people will kind of look at it and go, yeah, it's just incremental. But I came from the PC business, right, with Intel. And we got to a stage probably past the mid-90s where we went from one chip to the next chip to the next chip. And every time people were saying, yeah, it's just a faster chip. And now it was 20, 30, 40, 50% faster. And then just people found ways of using the software to use that. But it wasn't that it was suddenly that, oh my God, it's the battery's gone. Or maybe the design will be different and the weight of the battery, whatever. There's anytime I kind of go, I'm not sure what innovation is coming. Well, obviously I'm not the guy innovating it, so I don't know. But someone always will surprise you. But it depending on what you read in the rest of the press and to you guys, Damon and stuff, they might be one of the few guys with a new consumer VR, XR helmet or headset at the end of this year. Other people might be in 2024, so maybe they get a march there, right? Who knows? But hey, it's positive. At least it's the next step, right? It's step by step by step.
You have to look at like some of the competitors that will also be, that have already entered the markets. For example, the Pico 4 Interactive, Pico 4 Enterprise as well. Then you've got HTC's new Elite XR headset. Yep. So there's a lot of new contenders coming in here. And I actually am very happy about that, because this gives us the chance to have a really competitive market where there is a generation demand for these types of devices, that they're competing in the same space, and that people now have the ability to choose. This will also kind of force a bit more interoperability by saying, okay, well, let's work with our rivals as well to try to build some solutions to generate more wealth for the people developing the software, or the software sides of things. So I think
exactly
that may help quite a bit.
And in my industry world and the industrial metaverse and whatever, the more enterprise ready hardware platforms, and enterprise ready is very different to consumer, right? You've got the IT guys going, how are we going to do cybersecurity, device management, blah blah blah. And I suppose the other thing, again, I don't know what Meta is going to do, but it depends on the price point. Like supposing it's a very interesting price point for consumers, that opens up a whole different kettle of worms in terms of a lot more people getting access to this kind of technology. Because the Pro HTC, Pico, great devices. They're a little pricey, but let's see, right? Who knows?
Definitely. So yeah, any closing remarks or anything from either Andre, Kevin? What would you like to say? Start with you, Andre. Yeah, the finger pointing.
I had one of those awkward pauses. I was desperate to do one.
There had to be one. There had to be one.
There had to be one. I mean, yeah. I mean, overall, I'm as always, as I suppose someone of this interested in the tech and the future space. I'm always interested to see what's developing, what's on the horizon. I think really, I'm waiting for that curveball. Generally speaking, during the year, that there's some sort of curveball which throws me off piece. And at the beginning of the year, I have somewhat my anticipations. But I'm excited to see what curveball throws me off track, which then sparks new ideas for creative innovation in terms of the work that I'm doing. So I'm really excited to see who might come up with that and when.
Yep, defo. Kevin, how about you?
I suppose what do I expect in the rest of the year? I think some of the hype has died down, which is a good thing. But then if you watch something like Davos last week, they're all in on metaverse for the enterprise and for the industrial space. So I do think that we'll see a lot of more companies, everyone's investing in digital trends, and they'll look at ways of how can I use this in a different way, more immersive and whatever. So I think we'll see a lot of kind of people that have been in this industry for years will go, yeah, we've been doing that for 10 years. Yeah, but big corporations haven't. So for them, that's like them using Zoom 2 years ago in COVID, right? Video conferencing was transformational for many companies, and people would say, well, we've been doing that for 20 years. But it's all relative. So I think that, and the other thing I'd probably say is that, yeah, I hope we'll see, I don't know what I don't know. And I hope I'll see some technology or something pop up that'll be like, oh, wow, that changes things. And, I think we're just getting started. So if you thought 2022 was fast in terms of trying to keep up with stuff, I think, buckle up. 2023 is probably just going to get faster,
Absolutely. I agree with you on that too, for both of your points as well. And, one of the things I do want to share with the audience as well is the fact that, despite all of the challenges that have taken place across the XR industry, I think that there has been a lot of optimism, a lot of points that we have, to be optimistic for. Because, going to the IGS, seeing the ISE 2022, there was a lot of positive developments that took place in the market. And I think that there's a lot of new solutions that people will be able to experiment with in the near future. So despite all of the drawbacks from the XR industry, the current economy, I think we'll see a lot of fresh new developments for the XR industry, for this year and to come. So yeah, thanks so much, everyone. It's been great for you to join us today. My name again is Cureton, Senior Journalist for XR Today. We have had on Kevin O'Donovan. He is the Technology Evangelist and Co-Chair of the Vrara Industrial Metaverse Committee. We've also had Andre McQueen, Special Lecturer for MA and MBA Futures in Innovation at the University of the Arts, London. Once again, Stefan Cureton signing off. Thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Take care now.
Thanks very much.
Ciao.